Have you ever felt so trapped that you do anything to break free? Imagine your entire future has been planned for you, like a business merger. Your partner, your home, your life, all chosen by someone else. This is a story about a woman who said no. She made a reckless choice, a desperate gamble to reclaim her own life. But she didn't realize she was stepping into an even bigger drama, with a twist so sharp it would leave everyone breathless. Prepare for a story of defiance, a fake engagement, and a shocking revelation that proves you never truly know who you're dealing with. Chloe Vance lived a life that looked perfect from the outside. Her father, Arthur Vance, was a real estate titan who had practically built half of Raleigh. Her mother, Eleanor, orchestrated their social life with military precision. They lived in a sprawling estate in a gated community, a testament to Arthur's success. But for Chloe, a brilliant research scientist, the beautiful house felt like a gilded cage. For years, her parents had been grooming her for a different kind of merger. Not a corporate one, but a dynastic one. The plan was simple. Chloe would marry Benjamin Sterling Jr., the son of Arthur's old college friend and business rival, Ben Sterling Sr. It was a strategic alliance meant to consolidate power, wealth, and influence for generations to come. The only thing they didn't account for was Chloe's heart, or her fierce desire for a life she could call her own. The silence in Arthur Vance's gunmetal grey Lexus was heavier than stone. They were driving to the family's lake house on Lake Gaston for the weekend, a place that was supposed to be an escape, but now felt like a courtroom. Eleanor sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her jaw tight. Chloe was in the back, the scent of expensive leather and her mother's cloying perfume making her feel sick. The argument about Benjamin Sterling Jr. had been raging all morning, and now the fallout was a thick, suffocating cloud. Her father's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He finally broke the silence, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't understand your attitude, Chloe. The Sterlings are a good family. Benjamin is a fine young man." Chloe stared at the back of his head. "He's an arrogant puppet, Dad, and I'm not interested in being his puppet wife." The words hung in the air, sharp and ugly. The car seemed to get smaller, the air thinner. This wasn't a discussion, it was a declaration of war. Eleanor turned around, her perfectly made-up face a mask of disappointment. "Chloe, darling, we just want what's best for you, a secure future. My future is in my lab, with my research, not at charity balls on the arm of a man I can't stand," Chloe retorted, her voice rising. The pressure felt like a physical weight on her chest. Arthur's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, cold and unyielding. "This is not just about you. This is about family, about legacy." That was the word that broke her. Legacy. As if she were just a chapter in a book he was writing. A sudden, wild desperation seized her. "Stop the car," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "What?" "Stop the car, Dad. If you're so determined to marry me off for business, then I'll just go marry the first person I see on the street. I swear I will. At least that choice will be mine." Her threat was absurd, childish, but it was the only weapon she had left. Her father's grip on the wheel tightened even more. The rest of the weekend was a masterclass in passive aggression. The steaks on the grill were burned to a crisp because Arthur was too busy staring angrily into the distance. Eleanor had forgotten the artisan cheese and prosciutto for their charcuterie board, a cardinal sin in her world. The boat sat unused at the dock, the water skiing plans abandoned. Chloe spent most of her time on the porch, staring at the placid water, feeling a storm raging inside her. She replayed the morning's fight in her head. The way her mother had neatly folded Benjamin's polo shirts into a travel bag for a hypothetical honeymoon, talking about his father's company as if it were a dowry. "He comes from a good background, Chloe. His father is a powerful man. So I'm supposed to marry his father's resume?" Chloe had snapped back, the sarcasm dripping from her words. Now the memory fueled her resolve. Something had to change. She couldn't live like this, a pawn in their grand game. Monday morning felt like a continuation of the weekend's Cold War. Her father insisted on driving her to work at Biogen Innovations, the sprawling pharmaceutical campus where she worked. The silence was back, even more oppressive than before. As they pulled up to the main entrance, Arthur finally spoke. "The Sterlings are coming for dinner tonight, 7 o'clock. Benjamin is looking forward to seeing you. Behave yourself, Chloe. Don't embarrass me." It wasn't a request, it was a command. A switch flipped in Chloe's mind. The desperation from the car ride returned, but this time it was colder, sharper. "Oh, I'll be there, Dad," she said, her voice deceptively sweet as she grabbed her bag. "But I'm bringing a guest." Arthur frowned. "A guest?" "My fiancé," she said, the lie tasting like freedom on her tongue. "You wanted me to find someone, so I did. See you at 7. She slammed the car door before he could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. Now she just had to find a fiancé in the next 8 hours. The day was a blur of frantic energy and simmering panic. How could she have made such a reckless promise? She paced her lab, ignoring the puzzled looks from her colleagues. Her mind raced through a list of male acquaintances, but no one seemed right. She needed someone who wouldn't ask too many questions, someone who looked plausible. As the lunch hour approached, she felt a wave of defeat. The whole idea was insane. She was about to text her father and surrender when she headed for the campus cafeteria. Rushing through the sleek modern lobby, her mind elsewhere, she fumbled with her access card at the security turnstile. She swiped it too fast. The light stayed red, and the metal barrier didn't budge. She walked right into it, the jolt sending her stumbling backward, her files scattering across the polished floor. She braced for the impact, but instead of cold tile, she fell into a pair of strong, steady arms that caught her effortlessly. "Whoa there! The turnstiles aren't usually that aggressive on a Monday." The voice was calm and laced with a gentle amusement. Chloe looked up into a pair of startlingly blue eyes. He was tall and lean, wearing the simple navy blue uniform of the on-site maintenance crew. His face was kind, with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. His hands were still firmly on her arms, holding her steady. Chloe felt a blush creep up her neck. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, pulling away and trying to gather her scattered papers. "I wasn't paying attention." "Don't worry about it," he said, crouching to help her. His hands were calloused but gentle as he stacked the papers neatly. "I'm Liam, by the way." She looked at him, really looked at him, at the name tag on his shirt, at the easy confidence in his posture. And in that moment of pure, unadulterated panic, an idea, a terrible, brilliant idea sparked in her mind. He was perfect. Utterly, terrifyingly perfect. She took a deep breath, the scent of industrial cleaner and something faintly like motor oil filling her senses. "Chloe," she managed to say. "My name is Chloe." She stood up, clutching her files to her chest like a shield. "Listen, this is going to sound completely insane, and you have every right to say no, but I have a huge, ridiculous favour to ask." Liam stood up too, a curious smile playing on his lips. "Okay, you've got my attention. It's not every day a beautiful scientist falls into my arms and then tells me she's about to say something insane." His directness was disarming. "I need," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "I need a fiancé. Just for tonight. For dinner. With my parents." She braced for him to laugh, to call security, to run away. Instead, he just looked at her, his blue eyes searching her face. The hum of the building's ventilation system was the only sound for a long, agonizing moment. Liam's smile widened into a full-blown grin. "Let me guess. Parents trying to marry you off to some rich guy you can't stand?" Chloe's jaw dropped. "How did you—" "It's a classic story," he said with a shrug. "I've seen the movie. Look, I get off at 5. Tell me the details over coffee in the cafeteria. My treat." He seemed so unfazed, so willing, that it made her even more nervous. Was he an aspiring actor? Or just bored? They met an hour later, sitting in a quiet corner of the bustling food court. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods surrounded them. Chloe, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread, laid out the entire story. The pressure from her parents, the Sterling family, her lie about having a fiancé. So you just have to show up, pretend you're madly in love with me, endure a couple of hours of my family, and then you can disappear forever. I'll pay you, of course. He listened intently, stirring his black coffee, his expression unreadable. This was crazier than she had thought. I don't want your money, Liam said, finally looking up, but I will take you up on the offer, on one condition. Chloe leaned forward, her heart pounding. Anything. We do this my way, he said. No complicated backstory. We keep it simple. We met here, we fell for each other, and that's that. The more you lie, the more you have to remember. Truth is easier, even when it's just a little piece of it. He had a logic that was both comforting and terrifying. He was taking this seriously. They exchanged numbers and he promised to meet her at her parents' house at 6:45. As Chloe walked back to her lab, her mind was a whirlwind. She had just hired a complete stranger, a maintenance technician, to pose as her fiancé to her powerful, image-obsessed parents. This evening was either going to be the solution to all her problems or an absolute, unmitigated disaster of epic proportions. There would be no in-between. At precisely 6:45 p.m., the doorbell chimed. Chloe's stomach did a nervous flip. She had spent the last hour fielding her mother's anxious questions while trying to appear calm. Arthur was pacing in his study, the sound of ice clinking in a whiskey glass, a constant, ominous rhythm. Chloe opened the door to find Liam standing on the porch. He wasn't in his work uniform. He was wearing a simple, well-fitting, dark grey suit and a crisp white shirt, no tie. It wasn't expensive, she could tell, but it was clean and he wore it with an easy confidence. In his hand, he held a single elegant white orchid for her mother. It was a thoughtful, understated choice that surprised her. You clean up nice, technician, she whispered as she let him in. He smiled that easy, disarming smile. You're not so bad yourself, scientist, he murmured back, his eyes twinkling. The game was on. The introductions were painfully awkward. Eleanor accepted the orchid with a tight, forced smile, her eyes flicking over Liam's simple suit and worn-looking leather shoes. Liam works at Biogen with me, Chloe explained, trying to sound casual. He's an equipment specialist. Arthur emerged from his study, sizing Liam up with a look that could curdle milk. A technician, Arthur said, his voice flat. It wasn't a question. It was a judgment. That's right, sir. Keeping the multi-million-dollar machinery running so the geniuses like Chloe can do their work, Liam replied smoothly, extending a hand. Arthur shook it reluctantly. Just then, the doorbell rang again. The Sterlings had arrived. Benjamin Jr. swept in, all gleaming teeth and designer cologne, his parents flanking him like Secret Service agents. The air in the grand foyer crackled with tension. Chloe took Liam's hand, his grip surprisingly firm and reassuring. The battle was about to begin. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, under a massive crystal chandelier that glittered like 1,000 tiny daggers. The conversation was stilted, a verbal chess match, where every word was a calculated move. Ben Jr. spent the entire time talking about his new boat, his recent trip to Monaco, and the stock portfolio his father had gifted him. He barely made eye contact with Chloe, instead directing his peacocking at Liam. So, Liam, Ben began, a smirk playing on his lips as he swirled a glass of vintage Bordeaux. What is it you do exactly? Tighten bolts? Change oil filters? The insult was blatant, designed to humiliate. Chloe opened her mouth to retaliate, her face burning with anger, but Liam squeezed her hand under the table, a silent signal to let him handle it. He calmly placed his fork down and looked directly at Ben. Something like that. I make sure that the machines that produce life-saving drugs don't fail. Because when a machine that costs more than your boat goes down, people's lives are at stake. It requires precision and responsibility. The table fell silent. Ben Sterling Jr. was momentarily speechless, his smirk faltering. Arthur Vance looked at Liam with a flicker of something that might have been grudging respect before his stony mask slipped back into place. Eleanor quickly changed the subject, asking about the Sterling's summer plans in the Hamptons. Throughout the rest of the meal, Liam was a picture of quiet dignity. He spoke intelligently when spoken to, asked Arthur insightful questions about a new downtown development project, and complimented Eleanor's cooking with genuine appreciation. He never once tried to impress them. He was simply himself. And the more he was himself, the more Chloe found herself watching him, not as a prop in her drama, but as a man of surprising depth and character. The pretend hand-holding under the table began to feel less like an act and more like a genuine connection. The Sterlings left early, their departure as stiff and formal as their arrival. The pretense of a friendly dinner had shattered, leaving behind the wreckage of her parents' ambitions. As soon as their car was out of the driveway, Arthur turned on Chloe. "Are you happy now? You've made your little point. You embarrassed us, and you embarrassed yourself with this common labourer." "His name is Liam," Chloe said, her voice shaking but firm. "And he was more of a gentleman tonight than your precious Benjamin will ever be." She turned to Liam, who had been standing quietly by the door. "I think we should go." Before her mother could protest, Chloe grabbed her jacket. Liam said a polite goodbye to her parents, thanking them for the meal, as if the entire evening hadn't been a complete train wreck. They stepped out into the cool night air, the sound of the door closing firmly behind them like the end of a chapter. The silence in the car had been suffocating. The silence outside was a blessed relief. Instead of calling a rideshare, they started walking down the manicured, tree-lined street of her neighbourhood. The scent of night-blooming jasmine hung in the air. "I'm so sorry," Chloe said, breaking the silence. "I never should have dragged you into that. My father was horrible. Ben was a jerk," Liam finished for her, a small smile on his face. "Don't worry about it. It was actually kind of entertaining. You should have seen their faces when I talked about hydraulic fluid pressure." Chloe laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt like releasing a breath she'd been holding all day. "You were amazing, one man," she admitted. "Thank you. You really saved me in there." "All part of the fake fiancé service," he joked. They walked on, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The pretense was over, the job was done, but neither of them seemed to be in a hurry to end the night. There was an unspoken connection, a shared victory against a common enemy, arrogance and expectation. They found a small park at the end of the block, with a bench under an old oak tree. They sat down, the city lights glowing in the distance. "So that's my crazy life," Chloe said with a sigh. "A cage made of money and expectations." Liam was quiet for a moment, looking up at the stars. "You know, my dad's kind of like that too," he said softly. "Always had a plan for me. What I should study, who I should know, where I should work." This surprised her. She had assumed from his job and his demeanour that he came from a much simpler world. "Really, what was his plan?" she asked, genuinely curious. "He wanted me to go into the family business," Liam said, his voice holding a trace of old frustration. "But I wanted to do something with my hands, to build things, to fix them, to prove I could make it on my own, without his name or his money." It was a story that echoed her own in a way she never would have expected. They weren't from such different worlds after all. She looked at him, at the earnest expression on his face, illuminated by the soft park lighting. He wasn't just an actor she had hired for the night. He was a man with his own battles, his own story of rebellion. "So you became a technician to spite him?" she asked. He chuckled. "Something like that. It's honest work. And nobody here knows who my father is, so they treat me like a technician. It's refreshing." An impulse, stronger than the one that made her ask him to dinner, took over. She leaned in and kissed him. It was a soft, tentative kiss at first, but then he responded, his hand coming up to cup her face. The kiss deepened, full of all the unspoken tension of the night, the shared frustration, and the surprising, undeniable spark that had been growing between them. The world around them, with its meddling parents and strategic alliances, simply faded away. For a moment, it was just them. When they finally broke apart, the air between them had changed. The line between pretense and reality had been completely erased. "I should probably get you home," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "Yeah," she breathed. "You probably should." He walked her all the way to her front door. The house was dark. Her parents had likely retreated to their separate corners to lick their wounds. "So," Chloe began, not wanting the night to end, "I guess this is where the fake engagement ends." "Maybe it doesn't have to be fake," Liam said, his blue eyes serious. "What if we went on a real date? No parents, no pressure. Just you and me." Chloe's heart leaped. "I'd like that," she said, a real smile spreading across her face. "I'd like that a lot." The night that had started as a desperate, chaotic lie had ended with a thread of genuine hope. Maybe her reckless plan hadn't been such a disaster after all. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Chloe and Liam went on that date and then another and another. They explored local hiking trails, ate at hole-in-the-wall barbecue joints, and spent hours just talking. He showed her his small, tidy apartment filled with books on engineering and half-finished woodworking projects. It was a world away from her parents' sterile mansion, and it felt more like home than any place she had ever known. He was smart, funny, and incredibly kind. With him, she wasn't Arthur Vance's daughter or a strategic asset. She was just Chloe. She found herself falling for him, hard and fast. Her parents, for their part, were giving her the silent treatment, a tactic she knew well. They assumed her rebellious phase would pass, and that she would eventually come to her senses and call Benjamin. They had no idea how wrong they were. One evening, as they were cooking dinner in his small kitchen, the aroma of garlic and basil filling the air, Liam grew quiet. Chloe noticed his thoughtful expression. "What's on your mind?" she asked, stirring a pot of pasta sauce. He turned off the stove and took her hands in his. "There's something I need to tell you, Chloe. I should have told you sooner, but I was enjoying this, enjoying being just Liam." A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. "Okay. You asked about my dad," he said, his gaze steady. "The one with all the plans for me. The family business he wanted me to join." He took a deep breath. "He's the CEO of a company, a very large one. You've probably heard of him. His name is Michael Donovan." Chloe searched her memory. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. "I don't think Michael Donovan," Liam repeated slowly. "The founder and CEO of Biogen Innovations." The wooden spoon fell from Chloe's hand, clattering onto the floor. The world tilted on its axis. Biogen Innovations, the company where she worked, the company where he worked as a technician. Liam, the humble maintenance guy, was the son of the man who owned the entire multi-billion-dollar corporation. Her mind reeled, trying to process the information. It was impossible, it made no sense. "But you're a technician," she stammered, feeling foolish. "Your suit, your apartment. I told you I wanted to prove I could make it on my own," he explained, his grip on her hands tightening. "I started at the bottom. I wanted to learn the business from the ground up, not from a corner office. I wanted to know what it was really like for the people who make the company run, and I wanted to escape his plans for me." His story was so similar to hers, it was uncanny. He too had a Benjamin in his life, the daughter of a business partner his father wanted him to marry to secure a merger. His rebellion was just quieter, more prolonged than her single night of defiance. She stared at him, seeing him in a new light. The quiet confidence, the intelligence, the way he carried himself. It all made sense now. He wasn't playing a part. He was just living a different version of his truth. "So you lied to me," she said, the words coming out sharper than she intended. She wasn't angry, just overwhelmed. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I never lied. I am a technician. I do fix the machines. I just didn't tell you the whole story. I'm sorry. I was afraid you would see me differently, that you would see me as my father's son, not as me." Chloe looked into his honest, pleading eyes, and the last of her shock melted away, replaced by a profound sense of understanding. He wasn't a secret prince. He was just a man who, like her, was trying to write his own story. She reached up and touched his face. "You know," she said, a slow smile spreading across her lips. "This makes my fake fiancé story about 1,000 times better." A few days later, Liam called his father. He told him he was done with his self-imposed exile. He also told him he had met someone and was in love. Michael Donovan, a man known for his ruthless business acumen, was silent on the other end of the line for a long time. "Is she one of us?" he finally asked, the question heavy with meaning. "Does she know who you are?" "She knows," Liam said. "And she fell for the guy who fixes HVAC systems, not the CEO's son. Her name is Chloe Vance." There was another pause. "Vance?" his father repeated. "As in Arthur Vance, the developer? I know him. He's a shark." "Yeah, well, Chloe's a scientist, and she's nothing like her father," Liam said defensively. "Bring her to dinner," his father commanded, and hung up. The invitation felt less like a friendly gesture and more like a summons for inspection. The stakes of their relationship had just been raised exponentially. The dinner with Liam's father was in a private room at the city's most exclusive restaurant. Michael Donovan was an imposing figure, with the same blue eyes as his son, but hardened by decades of corporate battles. He grilled Chloe, not about her intentions, but about her work. He asked about her research, her methodology, her long-term goals. It was an interrogation disguised as conversation. Chloe, confident in her field, answered every question with precision and passion. She saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. He had been testing her, trying to see if she was just a socialite after his family's money. By the end of the meal, he seemed satisfied. "My son was a fool to hide in the maintenance tunnels of my company," he said, looking at Liam. "But it seems he found a diamond in the process. Don't hurt her." Coming from him, it was the highest form of blessing. The next challenge was her own parents. Chloe and Liam went to their house together. Arthur and Eleanor were still expecting her to come crawling back, ready to accept their terms. When they saw her walk in, hand in hand with Liam, their faces hardened. "Chloe, we've had enough of this nonsense," Arthur began, his voice booming. "I'm not here to fight, Dad," Chloe said calmly. "I'm here to introduce you properly to the man I'm going to marry. This is Liam Donovan." Arthur froze. "Donovan? You don't mean Michael Donovan's son?" "The one and only," Liam said with a polite smile. The colour drained from Arthur's face. He looked from Liam's simple attire to his daughter's defiant expression. He had tried to engineer a power marriage for his daughter, and she had stumbled into one that was 10 times more influential, all on her own, and completely by accident. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Eleanor was the first to recover, a flustered but brilliant smile appearing on her face. "Oh, Herr Donovan, how wonderful! Chloe, darling, why didn't you say so?" The hypocrisy was staggering, but Chloe didn't care anymore. She wasn't doing this for their approval. Arthur, on the other hand, was stunned into silence. All his plans, all his manipulations, had been rendered obsolete. His daughter hadn't just defied him. She had, in the world he understood, outplayed him without even trying. He looked at the two of them, at the genuine affection between them, and for the first time he saw not a disobedient child, but a strong woman who knew what she wanted. He slowly sank into a chair, running a hand over his face. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, not in anger, but in a kind of awe. His little girl had won the game he had forced her to play. Their wedding was nothing like the grand, strategic affair her parents had envisioned. It was a small ceremony in a beautiful botanical garden, surrounded by close friends and family. There were no business associates or political figures, just people who genuinely loved and supported them. Liam's father stood beside Arthur, the two powerful men looking surprisingly comfortable together, united by the happiness of their children. They had both learned a valuable lesson. You can't plan a life for someone else. You have to let them find their own way. As Chloe stood opposite Liam, saying her vows, she thought back to that frantic Monday, when she had impulsively asked a stranger to be her fiancé. It was the most reckless, illogical thing she had ever done. And it was, without a doubt, the best decision she had ever made. She hadn't just found a husband, she had found herself. During the reception, her father pulled her aside. His eyes were softer than she had ever seen them. "I was wrong, Chloe," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so focused on giving you a secure future. I forgot to ask what would make you happy. He's a good man. And more importantly, he loves you. That's a better foundation than any business deal." He hugged her tightly, a gesture of true, paternal affection that she had longed for. Later, as she and Liam danced under the stars, he leaned in and whispered in her ear, "So, do I get to keep the job as your fiancé?" She laughed, her heart full. "I think you've earned a promotion to husband," she replied, kissing him. "The position is for life." They had started their story with a lie born of desperation, but in the end they had found the most profound and unexpected truth: love. Months later, Chloe was promoted to head of her entire research division at Biogen, a position she earned through her own merit, not her new last name. Liam, having proven his point, finally accepted a management position in the company's operations department, where his ground-level experience proved invaluable. He was revolutionizing processes, making the company more efficient and a better place to work. They bought a modest house, not a mansion, filled with love, laughter, and a new woodworking shop for Liam in the garage. Their parents became doting future grandparents, their old rivalries forgotten, replaced by a shared family bond. The Vances and the Donovans, once two separate dynasties, were now united, not by a contract or a business deal, but by a genuine, unexpected love that had blossomed in the most unlikely of circumstances. It was a legacy of a different kind, one built on courage and authenticity. One evening, they found themselves driving by the park where they had their first real conversation. On an impulse, Liam pulled over. They walked to the same bench under the old oak tree. The air was crisp and the stars were bright. "It's funny, isn't it?" Chloe said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "If that turnstile hadn't jammed, if I hadn't been so panicked, if you hadn't been there at that exact second, none of this would have happened." Liam wrapped his arm around her. "I think it would have," he said. "I think we would have found each other eventually. Some things are just meant to be." She smiled, knowing he was right. Their journey was chaotic and unorthodox, a comedy of errors and mistaken identities. But it had led them here, to a love that was stronger and more real than any perfectly laid plan. Their beginning wasn't a fairy tale, but their story was better, because it was uniquely, wonderfully theirs. And so, Chloe's desperate act of rebellion led her not to ruin, but to a love and a life more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. The story's ultimate twist wasn't just that the humble technician was secretly a wealthy heir. The real twist was that two people from opposite ends of the same gilded cage found freedom by crashing into each other. They proved that the best-laid plans of parents often pale in comparison to the wild, unpredictable plans of the heart. Their families, obsessed with creating a legacy of power, instead became part of a new legacy, one built on love, respect, and the courage to choose your own path. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed Chloe and Liam's story, please show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing for more tales, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever made a rash decision that ended up changing your life for the better?